And welcome into week 4 of the NFL season and the Consistently Cashin podcast. I'm Colby Conway at Colby R. Conway over on X, formerly known as Twitter. And with me here, Ron Rigney. I believe it's at Ron Rigney over on X. Obviously, he's clearly excited for the Broncos Bears. I believe it's the hashtag collapse for Caleb competition event that's occurring.
Excellent.
So talk to me about your excitement for that game and then just how you are, my friend.
I mean, I can hardly contain it, as you can see, probably in my demeanor here. But I will tell you what was exciting, and Colby, I don't know if you had a chance to check this out. I've been watching the Toy Story game on Disney Plus, and let me tell you that is something. If you want to see something cool, go check that out. I mean, for me, it's up there with the helmet cam, the glow puck. Whoever thought of this idea, they need to get a promotion, a raise. They need to just be made the president of Disney and ESPN. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I probably enjoyed it way more than I should, being a 42-year-old man, but it is absolutely awesome if you get a chance to check that out. But yeah, so heading into week 4, cash for you last week, got back on that winning train. So let's try to do that again here this week. What do you say?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm looking over here, looking at some DraftKings pricing, messing around with our lineup. And then I think ultimately I just need to know what kind of quarterback you want to go with. So let me go ahead, and you can only imagine where I'm going here. But let's go ahead. Let me get okay. So I have Javonte Williams, Roshan Johnson, Jerry Jeudy, DJ Moore, Cortland Sutton, Cole Kmet, Marvin Mims Jr., 49ers defense. So we can pretty much have most quarterbacks, but I think here you're probably going to be wanting one of these two. So is it Fields or Wilson?
Fields or Wilson? We might as well flip a coin at this point. I'm gonna go from those two Titans today that could put up big numbers. I went with Matthew Stafford at $5,700 against that Indianapolis defense that has allowed the third most fantasy points to the quarterback position. We've seen the Tutu Atwells of the world and Puka Nacua come out of nowhere to be weapons for that team. Matthew Stafford has looked solid, and the Colts defense has looked anything but solid. I think at $5,700 with that matchup, that's where I ended up going with my lineup.
I don't mind that at all. I think when you look at some of these upper tier guys, I like to pay up at other positions more so than quarterback.
Agreed.
So I've pretty much canceled most of these guys above 7K just because I don't like paying up for a quarterback on DraftKings. The pricing's a little bit more tight per se than FanDuel. Typically I see on FanDuel you can get one extra stud. And that's kind of what I've seen here. So when I was in the same boat that you were, I pretty much held down this Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, CJ Stroud kind of area. I haven't gone too far down here. I understand if you want to do Kenny Pickett at 5,100, I can get behind it to an extent, but probably not. I think, honestly, I've really come down to Wilson and Stafford because if I'm not mistaken, Chicago's top corner, Jalen Johnson, has been ruled out as well. So that weak secondary is depleted even more. So I'm with you. To me, it's Stafford or Wilson.
I could live with Russell Wilson too, because the Bears defense, I don't know if anybody's had the unfortunate opportunity to watch them, but they are not pretty to watch. And even when they're losing one of their top players, it's going to get even worse. So I could go right there with them. They're right there with the Colts as far as allowing fantasy points to those defenses as well, or those offenses as well.
And for week 4, safety Eddie Jackson, corner Jalen Johnson, both ruled out of this game. So I'm cool with either one of those. The pricing is pretty much similar. Let's just kind of wait, see where our money comes down to. And maybe when we start looking at receiver pricing, maybe that kind of almost dictates our decision for us. So let's do that. Let's say this, though, just in case other people are maybe more willing to pay up for quarterbacks than you and I tend to be here on sites like this. Of these top tier options, do you have a lean amongst any of these guys, let's say $7,000 and above?
I mean, if I was going to pay up, it'd probably be for Kirk Cousins against Carolina, or to I'd be probably at the lower end part of there because I'm kind of like you. I did the same thing you did. I built all my skill players and then went with my quarterback last, so I'm paying down a little bit there. But if I was going to pay up, it'd probably be for Tua at 7,400 going against Buffalo. I know Buffalo's a tough team, but I have a feeling that the Buffalo-Miami game is going to come up a couple of times when we're making this lineup. And sitting there at a 53.5 point total as of right now, I think you want to get a piece of that as much as you can, but I think I would rather, and I'll see what you think about this, I think I would rather have those pieces come from my skill players.
I would really have liked to go with Justin Herbert, but Jimmy Garoppolo out gives me a little bit of pause. If the Chargers do what I expect them to do offensively, I think Aiden O'Connell might be okay because I believe for the Chargers, is it both Bosa and James are out?
Yes.
So that will help a little bit. Can they keep it close enough? That's going to be honestly, that's going to be the big question. Oof. Yeah, Bosa didn't practice all week and is listed as questionable per the Chargers site. Derwin James doubtful. So yeah, I don't expect them to play. So, and then a couple of other guys are hurt as well. So maybe that'll help. Maybe. Who knows? We shall see. Let's go over to running back here. McCaffrey's obviously the top dog at 9,200. No Austin Eckler. Are we about to get burned again by Josh Kelly just because we did cash last week despite him, not because of him, despite him? That's back-to-back weeks now we've gotten burned by the Josh Kelly train. And you got Tony Pollard. I really like Josh Jacobs in this matchup, but with Aiden O'Connell, I don't know how to feel. Because I think Garoppolo would help sustain drive, but with Aiden Connell, I think Jacobs' usage just goes through the roof. Like he may push 20 carries if they can keep this game semi-close.
I think it's going to have to. Just here again, kind of like what I said with that Chicago defense. If you've had the bad fortunes of having to watch the Chargers defense as well, they cannot stop anybody either. And we haven't seen Josh Jacobs get it going yet, and I think that's more of that. We didn't see him in the preseason kind of knocking that rust off, but I agree with you 100%. They're going to have to lean on him. I don't know what Aiden O'Connell is going to bring to the table. I agree with you with that Chargers defense being even more banged up and being worse than it normally is with those two studs there. I don't think that they're going to be able to keep up. But at the end of the day, I don't know if we want to go. I don't hate the Josh Jacobs pick. I don't know if we want to go with Josh Kelly again, man. I think we went with him 2 out of 3 weeks, and it's not paid off at all. Sitting there at $5,300. I think in that price range, though, there's a couple of other guys that I looked at that I feel a little bit better about. I went ahead. I'd mentioned that Miami and Buffalo game. I went with James Cook as my first running back. I feel like there's going to be a ton of points scored there. The big plays are going to have to come from somewhere. Went with James Cook as my first one. And then another guy that we have yet to see get it going, and I felt pretty good about this. I don't know how you feel about Najee Harris sitting there at $5,500. The only reason I like that is because I look for Pittsburgh to maybe get a little bit of a lead there and maybe have to lean on him a little bit and maybe give him the rock more than we've seen him get it in the past. But $5,500, $6,300 for Cook. That's where I went with my 2 spots.
Yeah, I mean, Houston's allowing the 5th most fantasy points per game to running backs this season, including 5 touchdowns on the ground. So I think you could definitely look to Najee Harris. It's a very good price for him. So I don't hate that really at all, to be honest. Looking at some of these guys here, I want no part of Derrick Henry. I want no part of Joe Mixon. As we keep going down here, let's see. Don't really like Ramondre Stevenson. Don't really want Kamara. I don't mind Zach Moss just because he's getting so much work. And this game, I don't think either of these two teams are capable of blowing the other one out. But I also think both are very capable of scoring pretty much at will against the other defense. And we've seen Zach Moss, the usage is just, I mean, look at these numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, at 6,000, I think we have to consider that even if he is he a zero? Oh, he's a non-zero in the passing game, so he does get involved there. So I think you could look to Zach Moss. I don't think James Conner does it again against a very good defense. I think last week was fine against Dallas, but I'm not willing to pay for it against San Fran. What do you think about formerly known as Devon Achane, who is now Achane? Achane, I guess, is how he wants it to be pronounced now. They are saying he's getting an expanded workload this week, but how much do we actually buy into it? And also, what does an expanded workload actually look like for a Miami running back, a team that throws it like 85% of the time?
Right. We don't know. We have no idea what the definition of that is. And Jalen Waddle is back this week, and Mike McDaniel wants to get the ball in the hands of playmakers. And not to say that Devin Achane, however you say it, not to say that he's not going to be part of that, but there's a lot of mouths to feed there. It could be something where he could get the ball quite a bit. Like I said, though, I don't know if we know exactly what that looks like. I agree with you on Moss. Anthony Richardson back this week, so could be some check downs there in the passing game as well. Maybe a little bit of added action for him in the pass game. I don't know that I feel all that great about the running backs in that Buffalo-Miami game other than James Cook myself.
Do you think this is well, let me go to the Denver-Chicago game. On both sides, do you think this is the Javonte Williams week? Because that Chicago defense is pretty soft against the run, allowing the 2nd most fantasy points per game. And then obviously Denver's numbers against running backs are a little bit inflated because of last week when Mostert and Achane went for what felt like 1,000 points combined. But do you think this is the week that like a Khalil Herbert or Roshan Johnson can get it going for the Chicago offense? Because these two, statistically speaking, fantasy points wise per game, are the two worst against running backs this season.
When I first made this lineup, I made it a couple days ago. I went with Khalil Herbert as my flex, and I was looking at it again before we went on air here, and I ended up changing it to Roshan Johnson. And the reason that I did that is if you watch that Chicago backfield, that Chicago offense is not lighting it up, but I feel like Roshan Johnson is the best back in that backfield. Dude's strong, reads blocks well, runs guys over. And Khalil Herbert is, I mean, he's kind of like Josh Kelly with me. I mean, we kind of waited on him to be a thing for a while, and he hasn't really been. But to me, when you watch that offense, when Roshan Johnson gets the ball, he's the guy that I think has the best chance to kind of take over that backfield. And the only problem with that is I still feel like they want to get Herbert involved. I look at Roshan Johnson's usage, and he's receiving right around 10 to 12 total touches a game. So that was my only concern there is he going to get enough touches to get us something in that flex spot or in that running back spot? But I do like both of those plays with Williams and Johnson or Herbert in that flex. But I think my favorite one for the price and what I think is going to happen was Roshan Johnson at 4,900.
Fair enough. We'll see if he actually makes it into the lineup. And let's go to wide receiver, and I'm going to use this as a segue. Deshaun Watson has been ruled out. He will not play with the shoulder injury. I believe that's what I'm seeing here. Let me confirm. Per Adam Schefter. Let my Twitter load. With Deshaun Watson not being healthy enough to play today, the Browns rookie 5th-round pick, DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, now expected to start versus the Ravens. Is that our quarterback, Ron?
I was going to say that means we need to change our quarterback right now. Actually, I do like that kid, though. If you got a chance to watch him in the preseason, he did do some nice things.
Very mobile. Listen, I'm not saying it's something, but I'm not saying it's nothing either. Let's see how the Ravens done. They haven't allowed a lot of rushing yards to quarterbacks this season, but like I know they faced CJ Stroud week 1, who he is almost borderline allergic to running. He just won't do it, but it is what it is. So there could be your punt play at quarterback if you want to go there. But talking about the receivers, does this take out Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore and any other pass catcher in Cleveland for you in this one?
It has to.
Yeah,
I mean, so Baltimore in itself is not a matchup that I love. I mean, I know they haven't been the Baltimore of old, but they're still pretty solid. And throw a guy in there that's never made an NFL start, that's a mobile quarterback, and it's a recipe for could be great, but it also could be a recipe for disaster as well. So yeah, I think that rules all of those guys out for sure.
When looking at the wide receivers, the top 3, you're picking straws between Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, and Stephon Diggs. Like, you can't really say anything bad about any of them because essentially they're all matchup proof. Doesn't really matter. Of those top 3, for me, I'm leaning Diggs at $1,100 cheaper than the other two, mainly because it allows me to save a little bit of price. And I don't think I'm sacrificing all that much upside because I think Diggs can pop off. Maybe not quite Tyreek level, but within $1,000 of him for sure. I would have liked Devontae Adams a little more with Garoppolo just because that target tree is so concentrated. But now I'm leery enough that I'm not looking that way. And then also I do love Keenan Allen. Nate Hobbs is ruled out. He hasn't been very good in the slot. And Allen's just been Herbert's guy. So really of those top guys, like I even really like Jamar Chase just because Tennessee's been horrible and they can't run it. Or since he cannot run it, you can't run it against Tennessee. So they're going to throw it a ton. So of these top guys, I think we're going to have to get one of them. Just with the way that we're looking, I think we're going to have money to do it. Do you have a lean amongst those top 5? Jefferson, Hill, Diggs, Adams, Allen, Chase? I guess that's 6. But
I think you're kind of splitting hairs there at the top 5. But when I initially made this, I went Devontae Adams, but then you got Aiden O'Connell in at quarterback. So I pivoted from that straight to Stephon Diggs at 8,100. Like you said, that $1,000, when you're constructing a lineup like this and you want to get one of those top guys, then that $1,000 is a big deal. I'd have no argument against any of those top guys. I'd love it if we could maybe finesse this somehow where we could get Diggs and Keenan Allen both in the lineup. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that, but went with him as my top guy. My other 2 guys, I kind of cheaped out, so maybe we could squeeze one of them in. Went with Tutu Atwell at 5,500, and then I went Adam Thielen at 4,500. Adam Thielen has been a target monster. It looks solid so far, been healthy. Got a nice matchup against Minnesota, but that $4,500 price tag is hard to scroll past when you're looking at this lineup.
Minnesota, 3rd most fantasy points allowed per game to wide receivers. And also, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that satisfied the old revenge game narrative as well for Mr. Adam.
Yes, correct.
So that could go there. I think if we scroll down a little bit more, some of the other guys I like, I actually prefer Puka this week to 2-2
Okay.
at will, just based on coverages and alignment. But if you need the money, I totally get going down to 2-2. Chris Godwin's one of my favorite plays this week, just because there's a very real chance that Mike Evans doesn't make it out of the first quarter, just because of his relationship with Marshawn Lattimore. I would never make a play solely because of that, but I'm saying it's happened enough that we have to consider it. And the New Orleans slot corner, Alante Taylor, has been like the most targeted dude out of the slot this season. So opponents are making it a priority to attack him, and Godwin is the Tampa Bay slot man. So Godwin's one of my probably preferred guys, honestly, at the 6,400. If you come down a little bit, Brandon Ayuk is really interesting. Did you see you probably get the thousands and thousands of sleeper alerts that happen all throughout the week and everything like that. But you see it was the 49ers are, quote, optimistic that Deebo Samuel will be available. They are optimistic that he will be available to play. That just sounds like he's going to be suited up, but they may not play him a lot if they don't need him. But they're optimistic that he'll be available to play. And I think the hidden text there is if we need him.
See, that sounds a lot like when Julio Jones would suit up for the Falcons with an injury, and he was they were optimistic he would be available, and he's available, and he might line up on the field, but he's going to end the game with 2 catches for 12 yards. So
Yep.
I'm with you. That screams out he's going to be dressed on the sideline, and we're not going to use him if we don't have to. And I don't think they're going to have to, especially with Brandon Ayuk being healthy. You may or may not hear me say George Kittle at tight end here in a little bit. I like that matchup because we know that Arizona. We know the story with Arizona with covering tight ends. I won't even go into it, but that Brandon Ayuk play, the volume is going to have to be there because there's not anybody else other than Kittle in that passing game.
Yeah, and then you come down a little bit more. Cortland Sutton is actually $1,300 cheaper than Jerry Jeudy, but Sutton's the 100% consistent guy so far this year per the consistency, the clutch game metric that we have here at Big Guy Fantasy Sports. And honestly, Ron, if I'm being honest, until Tank Dell's over $5,000, he's I almost think you have to keep playing him. I don't know how you don't. Fantasy points, they have a data suite over at their site that I was looking at, and each week Tank Dell's percentage where he's the first read of like the play keeps going up every single week. And he's the guy with the most juice. Like Nico Collins is very good after the catch just because he runs through people. Robert Woods is what he is at this point. Dell's the only guy with juice in that offense, and you can see it here. He's been very, very good of late. So, and it's a very good matchup. The Pittsburgh corners stink, and he should see a lot of Patrick Peterson. And as you get older, you tend to get slower. And I think we can both agree Patrick Peterson is a little bit older at this point in his career. So some wide receivers there. Underneath 4K, you can go Marvin Mims for GPP. I think he's interesting. I'm not playing him in cash games, but there you go there. I do expect a lot of ownership to come from one of the Chargers receivers not named Keenan Allen. People are going to speculate, is it Quentin Johnston? Is it Josh Palmer? For cash games, just because you do get a good bunch of saving, Johnson's 3,700. You can do that. But instead of taking a question mark on one of them, just get Adam Thielen or Tank Dell for $500 or $600 more. That's a safer play. So if you're going to go cash games, that's where I'd be looking to go there at wide receiver of the bottom of the barrel options. Over at tight end, TJ Hawkinson has been that guy this season. Gets a matchup against Carolina here, so we could look to him. We got Mark Andrews. George Kittle, you already mentioned him a little bit. The Cardinals, to their credit, have been better this year. However, they're still allowing double-digit fantasy points per game to tight end. So instead of being the worst by a wide margin last year, they're just in like the bottom half now. So I think you can definitely look to George Kittle. And with the way the kind of offense is banged up a little bit there, maybe we finally see a higher workload for Kittle. But other than Kittle, anybody else here that kind of catches your eye at the tight end position? Because I have one that's going to ruffle some feathers, but I'll be curious what you think here.
I'm curious to hear who you have. I'm always a guy that I love no matter what. Pat Freiermuth is a guy that I absolutely love. He's one of my favorite players in the league. Dude just gets it done. I love those 5 catches for 60-yard guys that get open in the red zone. And he's had 2 touchdowns. Those will come in the red zone as well. I'd love to see his usage go up a little bit more, but they're against Houston. I would say if I'm going below George Kittle, Pat Freiermuth is probably my favorite play.
Fair enough. Houston should have both their safeties, Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie, on the field. But as I'm looking at the numbers here, Houston still allowed 85% of targets to tight ends to be caught this season. So that's a pretty high percentage. We need the touchdown with Freiermuth. I think he is in play as well. So I think you could definitely look to him. There's two plays that I like. And when I look at them, let me give you the first one here. $3,600 Gerald Everett, just because he did have a good week last week, 6 for 30. So he's at least getting targets, getting usage there. Instead of speculating on which receiver is going to basically be the second fiddle, why not do it with the tight end here? Gerald Everett at $3,600. Or I'm coming down here, and we're going to give us some price savings. Chig Okonkwo. Since he has been bad against tight ends this season. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Seventh most fantasy points allowed to the position, allowing 80% of targets to be caught and 2 scores to the position. And when you look at the Tennessee Titans offense, Treylon Burks isn't playing. Hopkins is, I don't know what he is at this point. He's slow and banged up. Could this be the Chig Okonkwo week? It's been very minimal thus far, but at $3,100, if it comes down to dropping down from like Kittle or maybe even Freiermuth, $300, that can get us another stud wide receiver. I'm kind of banking on Okonkwo's upside today. And if you're really in a pickle, you could look at like a Brevin Jordan type. This Dalton Schultz guy, he is just killing half of my fantasy teams. Actually, in one of the Kings Classic leagues, I'm probably going to bench Schultz for Okonkwo, which means Schultz is going to go off today. So maybe you should leave him in your lineups, but we'll have to see how that goes. So that's the tight end position. We'll see what we end up with there. And then defense-wise, 49ers kind of stand head and shoulders above the rest. I do like Philly at 4,100. Are there any value defenses this week, do you think? Or is it now basically, even though the Chargers are all banged up, taking them against Aiden O'Connell?
There's nothing that I love. I mean, I looked at that Charger game and hoping that they may get a couple of turnovers here and there, but I'm also really afraid that they're going to let Aiden O'Connell go off as bad as they have been. I couldn't get really past throwing in. Well, the Ravens defense now I think is definitely in play.
That's going to be the chalky play now.
Yeah, with Deshaun Watson going out, you may have to go there. I couldn't get past the Eagles going against Washington. No, that Eagles defense is just nasty at every level, and it's just hard to get past them. So I went with that. But like I said, if we want to go back up and revisit wide receiver and maybe think about getting Keenan Allen in there besides Stephon Diggs, maybe going with Okonkwo and maybe going down a little bit further on defense is going to allow us to do that. So let's see what happens.
For sure. All right, let's take a look here. Let's go ahead and put something together. We'll wait on defense, and we'll see if that $900 comes to matter. So let's do this. Who is your one must play? We'll each get one must play in the lineup here, and kind of we'll build around that then from there.
Aside from I'm going to not go super obvious here. Mine, I think, is going to be Adam Thielen at $4,500. I can't get past that price with the amount of targets and amount of catches he's racking up.
So that's what we're looking at there for our must plays. Let's go ahead over to quarterback. Basically, we haven't really been in love with really any of the Denver receivers unless we're going to go Sutton, but then we have 3 kind of budget receivers that'll give us a stud, but we don't really seem like we're too keen on like a stud running back really. Seem like we may end up paying down there. So, I mean, what do you think here? Like, we may end up having enough money where we end up going Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and pay for the expensive stack. Have to see how it goes. But what are you thinking here at quarterback for now? Do you want to slot in like a Russell Wilson or Matthew Stafford?
Let's see what I can try to find Russell Wilson here. 58. Let's go Stafford at 57 because he's $100 cheaper, and then let's see what that gets us.
All right, and then receiver. Let's go. I mean, right now, do you want to throw in Diggs and Allen?
Let's see what it does. Yeah, I feel really good about that.
Okay. Let's go to running back here, 4,300. So we're getting a little cheap. So now it's going to get a little interesting how we end up doing this. So it looks like now probably go with Najee. 55 defense at this point. We're going to have to go Ravens. Well, I guess we don't have to yet. All right. So if we go there, Zach Moss at 6, that's going to take. Actually, we may be okay. Let's hold off on there. Let's go tight end. Do you want a second Steeler with Freiermuth or drop down to Okonkwo?
I feel a little better about us getting things we like in the other parts of the lineup if we go Okonkwo.
Okay. And then we got 8 left. So if we go defense, if we go Eagles, that's 4,700 for a running back. Khalil Herbert.
I believe they'd give us Khalil Herbert, even though I like Rashawn Johnson in that scenario a little bit better.
So that's $200. But if we drop down from the Eagles, where are the Ravens? There's the Ravens. And now if we come back to running back, we got 56. I don't like Rachaad White. I mean, do we go with Javonte and hope this is the week it's a bad Chicago defense?
I think so. I
mean, he's getting most of the back, and I don't like anybody here. I so desperately want Dameon Pierce to be in play, but not with 7 backup linemen. And you and I are only a phone call away from playing left tackle for that team at this point. So don't know if we can go there. But I mean, when you look at Javonte's weeks, if he can get into the end zone once, we're talking 15, 13, 14. That's almost 3x the ROI. Double digits each game, multiple targets. Game script should be in his favor. Let's go Javonte Williams. Okay, so now we do have $100. Do we go the weird quarterback running back stack with Wilson? Because we don't have any RAM. Unless we want to try to move like down or up from somebody to get like Puka, or do we switch your must-have player? Nope, we wouldn't even be able to do that. Thielen's just way cheaper. I think that's about what we're going to do.
Okay.
So basically the last question, it comes down to Stafford or Russell Wilson. That's pretty much the only change we can make. I mean,
Your call.
I don't hate a quarterback running back stack.
No, I don't either, especially when it's against a defense that's that bad, because I feel like it could be something where if Denver shows up and can actually play a little bit of defense and get a lead, it could be something where there's enough for Wilson at the front end to get the lead up there, and maybe they got to hand off to Javonte to keep the lead a little bit. I don't know. Maybe I've got too much faith in the Denver defense though too.
Well, hey, if they score, that means that we're getting things there. Let's go the contrarian quarterback running back stack.
Okay.
I mean, Williams does get a couple targets here and there. I mean,
yeah,
it's a couple of
and
weeks,
Chicago's allowed three touchdowns to running backs through the air. So who knows? There could be one there. Could catch a touchdown in the red zone for Javonte Williams. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, only the Broncos and Packers have played an extra game. So really only the Broncos have allowed more receiving yards to running backs. And then in terms of rushing yards, Chicago's up there as well. So yeah, let's do that. Look good to you?
Yeah, I like it.
All right. That's the week 4 consistently cashed lineup here. Russell Wilson, Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, Adam Thielen, Chris Godwin, Stephon Diggs, Chig Okonkwo, Keenan Allen, and the Ravens defense. Expect a lot of ownership on the Ravens defense, especially at this price point. So if they do great, we're probably not separating too much. And if they do bad, we're probably not getting burned too much, especially in cash games. I'd expect them to be owned. So that will do it for the week 4 consistently cashing lineup. Give me a follow at X at Colby R. Conway. Ron is at Ron Rigney. Ron, let everyone know. I just told them where they can find you, but what all you got coming out on the Big Guy Fantasy Sports website coming up here in the coming days or the week ahead?
Yeah, go check out the Consistency Football Show for last week if you need any last-minute consistency info, and then check us out next week. Bob and I always get that together on Wednesday nights, so that's always up on Thursday. You guys have absolutely been killing it with the prop bets. You guys have put plenty of money in people's pockets, so go check that out. And go check out the rest of our friends and all the great things that they have to offer over at BigGuyFantasySports.com.
Yep. Now the Who's Hot, Who's Not article early next week. Obviously, consistently cashing here. And then the Prop It Like It's Hot. Go check it out if you need some player props for the week ahead. Knock on wood, Bob and I have been quite hot of late, hoping to keep it going. So make sure you check that out. Give us a follow over on X. And we will see you next week with the next edition of the Consistently Cashin' podcast.